All right, here we are. Hello, internet friends. I am Ryan. This is After Dark. We got a really jam-packed one tonight. Everybody wanted to be on tonight, so this is exciting. It's we have a guest who is just amazing, and you know who I'm talking about. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce some of our panelists here. We have Sean from Scythe Guitars.
What's up, y'all?
We have Eddie from Blues Lawyer Memes.
Yo!
We have Charles from Silktone Amps. We have Steve from Lifehouse. We have Mark from Scythe Guitars. Our friend Will is back again, and that is exciting, whatever. And John.
That is excited.
That is excited. John
I'm
Gill
very exciting.
is already on here asking for James, and here he is. James Valentine, my friend. Hello.
Yo.
How are
What's
you?
happening? I'm excellent. Thank you for having me.
Good.
Thanks for being on.
Yeah. The first thing I wanted to talk about before we kind of get into shit is we lost a really great person from the recording industry today. And in spite of the fact that I don't do heavy music, I learned so much from Steve, via his YouTube channel and stuff. Like the way I far mic amps is exactly what he laid out in his videos. And it's just it's a huge loss, I think, for us as an industry. But so it's just, I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts about that man.
Yeah, it was just a shocker. He was huge. So many 90s bands, but I think mostly more so than the bands that I like that he produced and stuff or engineered. He just said a lot of really funny shit.
It's true. Yeah. I was going back and revisiting some of his videos, and there was one where he's he had just got a haircut, and he was apologizing for his fascist haircut. It was
yeah,
and it was totally it was dry as all get out. But anyway,
I think you got to give him credit for being the guy to even do the math on you plug your guitar or bass or whatever into a DI, and then you have an amp, and just even the deep thought of there's time between that speaker and the mic versus the DI. There's no time. That is right. The stuff that wiggles around in my brain, and I never really want to see out.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I don't do that. I don't do the math. I don't have the whiteboard like he did in those videos and stuff. But yeah, no, I mean, and he was one of those dudes who was just self-taught. Figured out how to do the thing and did it, and didn't give a flying F what anybody thought about it. So that's really cool.
And he had so much integrity too, because he just his approach to production in terms of his deals with the band, he refused to take points on records.
Yeah,
which is just which is so cool. He's just no, I'm offering a service. You come in, you record, and then you guys go on, and it's yours. As opposed to, so many of these producers that demand points on the record and demand, publishing and songwriting credit. So much integrity. So it's a huge loss. Very sad.
Is points still a thing? I remember points in the 90s, but is that still a thing that happens today?
Well, I get. Yeah. I think that still happens. I mean, nobody's selling CDs, so there's just so much less money. I think the points that you would have got in the 90s, more of that is transferred over into getting publishing and songwriting credit. So a lot of those producers, they'll sort of work in to get more of that.
Yeah.
Just because there's less money, so a smaller pie, and everybody's going for.
Is that and James, you don't have to answer this, but I'm actually kind of curious. Is that something that happens, at your level, or is it for your first album, second album, up and comers kind of thing, where a producer might try to get that kind of deal?
Oh shoot!
Uh-oh.
It's all
Sorry,
on like a
James.
song.
Sorry, sorry.
Whoa,
You dropped
what
out.
was that?
Wrong
You-
button.
you-
Wait, were those sound effects? Do you have sound effects? That's amazing.
No, I think that was Ryan screaming.
Yeah, it was me
Amazing.
screaming. I'm sorry.
No, yeah, I think like on a song per song basis, and it depends on the producer. I mean, it's the music industry is still kind of the Wild West, and it continues to adapt. So I think each record, each song is different, and what each producer expects is different. And there's kind of like, I feel like today, like Steve Albini, he was more of a classic producer. Like this band comes in with their songs that they've written, and he records them and then they leave. And a lot of the producers working today are more sort of hybrid producer writers. So all those deals will be sort of different, and maybe they'll get a production fee on top of then also getting songwriting credit, and or points on the master. So I mean, every single deal is different, and so much of it is over my head. You're probably asking the right.
Yeah, don't ask the guitar. I just play guitar.
I just play guitar.
Yep.
Well, the lawyer in me really is like curious about how these things are structured. That's why it's just the business is fascinating. That's why I asked. It's like
yeah, no, it is really interesting, and like for us, the arc of our career too. We started off as more of a classic band where it's like we wrote all the songs together.
Yeah.
And we prided ourselves on that in the beginning. And then we went in to work with a producer who just produced the records, and we were just looking to him to help us, get killer sounds and sort of put it all together. And then, about 10 years into our career, then we started working with more outside writers and producers that were bringing us up more ideas. And so at that point, it sort of changes from the sort of deal that you would have with the producer, which would be like, okay, here's your production fee, and you get this many points on the master, to like someone like Benny Blanco or Max Martin that we worked with being like, here's a song that we've started. Do you guys want to help finish writing the song? And then, they own a certain percentage of the song and we own a certain percentage of the song. And then you look at our album credits, and then there's like all of a sudden 20 people, on one song. And so, splitting up that deal, that's where it gets extremely complicated. And I don't know how the accountants, of the record label and, of our management go through all that, because it gets very complicated very quickly.
Yeah. I mean, it's just complicated listening to that. So
that's super cool. I mean, it's good. That's a really interesting topic. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. So, I
Who's one? That wasn't me that time.
like who's
Your drag race outside?
That wasn't my kid.
whose plane just took off? Like,
That's probably me.
Do you live in the airport?
that's the sounds of Kansas City right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll start off here. I know everybody has some stuff that they want to ask you, and I'll start off. First off, Stories About Jane was a monster record for me. I was in music school. I have vivid memories of riding the bus down Washington Avenue, listening to that record on my iPod. Hearing like diminished chords and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, this is pop rock. This is insane, and Songs About Jane. And it was a huge record for me at the time. And I listened to it a lot. Thank you
Thank you.
for your contribution to making music that is amazing.
Thank you very
But
much.
one of the get that out of the way. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about was your signature guitar, and I have two questions about it. The first one is, how does a dude who plays telly for most of his career end up with a guitar with double humbuckers? The second question is,
Will knows that that is not correct, but we'll get into that.
Okay. Second question is what was that process like? I've talked to various amount of people who have had signature guitars, and some have had a lot to do with the process, and some have had very little. So I'm interested to hear. Again, maybe I always thought of you as a telly player, but apparently I'm wrong. Anyway.
No, you're absolutely right. I am a telly player. Where's my? Oh, I was gonna see if it was there. Oh, it's not there. Here's my signature guitar.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, I was a telly player forever. So we kind of started with a telly pickup, but so the innovation here. This is actually this is weird. I can't.
You're nailing it.
Yeah, there we go. This is actually like a telly style bridge pickup in a humbucker case.
Got it. Because
like aesthetically, we liked the way that looked. Because I always knew that I wanted a humbucker in the neck because I was always a fan of 335s and Les Pauls. I mean, so I was kind of switching between Les Pauls, 335 style guitars and tellies. And so we kind of combined those two guitars. It doesn't really make sense when you think of like a 335 meets a telly, but like the shape of this is kind of from the 335, and then it's got the telly style bridge pickup, and we put a coil tap on that humbucker so that it can do more of a single coil thing. I mean, so the idea was like to have one guitar that I could play through the entire Maroon 5 set because I was switching around a lot. The guitar that I moved out to LA with was a Gibson ES 346, which is kind of a weird guitar, but that was my main guitar for all my like teenage years into my early 20s, and I actually recorded a lot of songs about Jane with that guitar. But then that was kind of like too dark for a lot of the stuff that Maroon was doing, so then I started gravitating towards the tellies. And so I had two Telecasters that they weren't even real Telecasters. They were actually put together by Jonathan Wilson. You guys know the guitarist Jonathan Wilson?
Oh yeah, isn't he the producer for like Father John Misty and stuff too?
Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
he is great.
It's cool. Like when he moved to LA from North Carolina, he was known as the guy who made these amazing knockoff Telecasters.
So crazy.
And so my two main Telecasters were made by Jonathan. It was really before he had got his producing. I mean, now he's the guitar player for Roger Waters too.
Yeah,
so, at that time, he was putting these guitars together. So those were my main guitars for a while. Like I had known the Ernie Ball guys for a long time. I wasn't interested in doing a signature guitar initially, but I kind of it's a funny story with the Ernie Ball Music Man guys because in 1999, my band from Nebraska, which was a power trio called Square, we actually won the Ernie Ball Battle of the Bands competition, which was a national competition. Like out of 6,000 bands, we won $25,000 from Ernie Ball.
Damn.
In this Battle of the Bands, and the finals were held in LA. And rather than get the plane tickets to the round trip plane tickets to come out to LA and back to Nebraska, we just asked them to pay for our moving van because we're like, fuck it, we're moving to LA. We're going to go try to get a record deal. We're going to do it. And so I had a relationship with Ernie Ball since then because that really got me started out in LA. And it was through that competition that I eventually met the guys that would become Maroon 5. They were in another band called Cars Flowers, and they were looking for another guitar player. and they sort of poached me from that band willingly because I saw them play and I was like, oh, these guys are actually really good and they're writing amazing songs. So I had known Ernie Ball, for all those years. So when I kept on running into Brian Ball. I actually ran into him at Coachella. Brian Ball is now the president of Ernie Ball. It took over from his dad, Sterling, who took over from his dad, Ernie. And he's like, you should do a signature guitar. And honestly, the first meeting I went in just kind of to be polite. But then we started talking about what we could do. And then we mocked up some designs. And I was like, wait, this could be really cool. And then, we built, I think, probably about 8 prototypes before we nailed down what it became. And so it was a really fun process, something I never thought I would do. And we're coming up on like 10 years and it's the only guitar that I really need to play on stage with Maroon. So it's been,
that's awesome.
It's been great.
What that first prototype looked like? What'd you change about it?
Initially we were going with like the like Gibson scale length.
Oh yeah.
So that was different. We experimented and we do make some versions with like a rosewood. But we ended up going with the maple. The size, we kind of we made one that was a little bit bigger and one that was a little bit smaller. And this was kind of the Goldilocks size. Mm-hmm. The weight, initially it was a little heavy and we actually Sterling Ball came up with this design innovation, which is it's a tapered body.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
So it's kind of like that, which took a little bit of the weight off of it. And also kind of makes it a little bit more ergonomic because it's basically a slab, but it's got that sort of tilt. And so that felt really nice. And then we were just experimenting with the neck size and different pickup configurations. I guess it was kind of the main difference on those prototypes.
So that's full telly length on that one?
Yeah, so it's got the Fender scale length, whatever that is, which is longer than the Gibson. Because it was after, because Annie Clark was doing her signature at the same time, and then I started playing hers. She was a little ahead in the design process, which has that Fender scale length, and I was like, yeah, no, that there's just a little more snap, which is kind of important for our funk sort of thing.
Yeah,
that I think from that scale length that you get that you just don't get on the Gibson. I love playing that shorter scale length because it just it's just a little more slinky, but that sort of snap that you get for the funk stuff I think is better on that Fender length.
It's funny that you say funk. I was talking to one of my neighbors this afternoon, and I mentioned that we were going to be having this conversation. And, I was like, as a dude who was raised on R&B and soul music, the first time I heard Maroon 5, I was like, yeah, this is a sweet R&B band that is doing really good stuff. And he was like, no, they're a rock band. And I'm like, no, go back and listen to it. They're totally an R&B band, in the way that the Bee Gees were an R&B band. It was and
it's funk pop.
Yeah, how do you do you find yourself leaning more towards the R&B world or the rock world and just kind of melding the two together, or is it how do you kind of classify what Maroon 5 even is?
Well, it was always kind of, it was weird. And especially it's hard to put yourself back into, 2001, 2002.
Yeah, exactly.
but remember that, it was all it really felt like there weren't a lot of bands that were doing anything other than, obviously it's kind of coming out of the ashes of grunge in the 90s and all this sort of heavy stuff. And then we were just starting to get into that new wave of the Strokes.
Yeah.
And kind of the new sort of indie guitar bands. And so no, there weren't any bands with guitars that were playing R&B influenced or soul influenced sort of stuff. And it was a very sort of conscious shift. So the other guys in the band, they were in a band called Cars Flowers that they made a record in 1997. They were signed out of high school, and they made a record with Rob Cavallo, and it was very much in the vein of his sort of stuff. Like it was like Weezer, Green Day. It was power pop. Like they were really into the Beatles, and it was straight ahead guitar rock, power chords, pretty straight down the middle rock music. But like they just kind of, at the time that I met them, they were over that. They were exploring new stuff. Jesse, who was switching from guitar to piano, he was taking like jazz piano lessons. And so he was like learning new chords. So, you talked about like the diminished chords and some of that stuff. Like he was
like
just
in This
learning
Love,
that stuff.
like you guys hang on that diminished chord on This Love. And I'm like as a music student, as a composition student at the time, I'm like, those dudes are just hanging on this chord. And this is on top 40 fucking radio, like.
Yeah, well, a lot of that stuff, I mean, it was new concepts for them. Like Jesse and Adam, they went to music school for like one semester out in New York.
You're a Berkeley guy, right?
Well, I went to Berkeley for 1 week in 1996. I went for a summer session.
Still counts.
I wanted to go there. I couldn't afford it. I mean, it was, it's expensive now. It was still expensive back then. So yeah, I went to 1 week to a summer guitar session. And it was at that camp that I made friends with another blues guitarist from Connecticut who beat me out for the scholarship to return for the regular year, who you might have heard of, named John Mayer. Yeah. Who was there at this, he was there at the same time that I was.
What a prick.
Could have been me. No, but
he
was
win the Battle of the
already...
Bands Ernie Ball competition. I don't think so.
No, he did not win the. No, that's right. That's right. Yeah. No, I think by then Room for Squares was already like platinum.
Update the Wikipedia page.
Yeah, I wanted to go to. No, so those guys, they were getting into R&B. They were getting into jazz. I mean, on that first record, if you listen to the song Sunday Morning,
yes,
it's a 2-5-1 progression in C major.
Yes.
Which was like Jesse's first jazz piano lesson. So and like they turned that, like they're like, oh, cool, ding, 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 and they turned that into a song right away.
Which is like
so there was all this new stuff.
It's a formula that works. I mean, my God, it works. I mean, like, so yeah, absolutely.
And that was part of the reason that I got recruited into the band, because I came from, original. When I was a teenager, I set out to be like a jazz guitar player, and that was kind of my whole world, and that's what I wanted to do. But I kept on getting recruited into these bands, and I always liked pop music, rock music, and so I was playing that. But I definitely had more of a jazz influence, and they were just sort of starting to figure that stuff out, and so they recruited me because they're like, oh, he understands this new sort of harmony. And he knows, like, what a diminished chord is and what a flat nine and sharp, because that was like all like esoteric knowledge to them at that point.
And I think that's a big, I think that's a big difference between pop rock, and jazz is kind of your concept of harmony, right? It's less about, this is the chord that's prescribed to this thing. And it's more about like, okay, bass player's playing this, keyboard player's playing this, lead singer singing this note. And, and so like, it sounds like you got in there in a time when they were, really starting to figure that kind of stuff out. And you were able to come in and go and fill some of those gaps and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it was perfect timing. It was so I was lucky to meet them when I did, and the fact that we're still doing it 20 years later is pretty crazy.
Exactly.
So how did the song? So I'm kind of curious. How did the songwriting process work for you? Because every band has a different process. Every group has a different process. Like, how was it for you guys when you joined and when you guys were doing, let's say, songs about Jane, and then like how did it evolve? I know you said you guys brought in writers from out like third party writers. Like, how did that process shift and evolve, and what's it like? What was it like then, and what's it like now?
Well, those early days, I mean, it was much. Every song sort of happened in a different sort of way, but it would generally be that it would start from a chord progression that either Jesse or I would write, or like a riff, or chords that then Adam would write melodies over. So, like in the case of She Will Be Loved, I sort of had this like bossa nova pattern that I was playing, and Adam heard it and started singing that verse melody, and then we expanded that into that whole song. And that's how most of those songs would come up. It would just be like, hey, here's a vibe, here's a riff, here's a chord progression. Okay, let's put it with this, and then, oh wait, let's take these chords from this song that's not really working, and then use it here. And so we'd all sort of do that together. At the time, I was living in a house in Los Feliz with Adam and Sam Farrar, who was helping us record demos, and so we'd just sort of put them together like that, and it was a really fun process, and we'd be together in the room, sort of doing that. And then it evolved. Once the outside writers and producers, the first time that we worked with anyone outside the band was on Moves Like Jagger, and that was Benny Blanco playing Adam this beat that he had done with the producer Shellback, really talented guy that works with Max Martin, and they had kind of a rough outline of the song, and there were sort of like nonsense lyrics in the song at that point. They were kind of like X-rated lyrics that Shellback had written as sort of like placeholder lyrics, which I could not even repeat on air. That demo exists somewhere, though. That would be really funny if that eventually came out. And then, and Adam wrote the words, and then we'd go in and sort of play parts. So it became a sort of different thing after that. And what's cool is right now we've been we're working on a new record, and we've gone back to sort of the old way. We've been sending each other ideas, and we were actually been working together in hotel rooms while we've been playing shows. So for the first time in a while, we've actually been sitting in a room and working on some songs together, which has actually been really fun.
That's
I
awesome.
kind of missed that.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Speaking of hotel rooms, I have kind of a funny story. And I'm not sure if it I'm not sure if you remember it. I'm sure you don't. But a couple years ago, you blew up a KTR, and you were looking for a new one for a tour, and there were none to be found. And maybe it was your tech, but I was working for the distributor for Klon at the time. And
oh yeah. Yeah, that was my last analog rig.
Yeah. Anyway, you have my KTR.
Oh no shit. Well,
we were like, I mean,
finders keepers.
There were literally none to be found anywhere on the planet.
Yeah.
And I had just received one, and so I boxed it up and sent it out your direction.
Wow. Thank you. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, this
I wasn't doing anything with it.
Yeah, I guess I had that. That was my lead channel through that. But like a couple years ago, I finally just went completely over to the dark side. I'm just full fractal now.
sick.
Are you really?
So,
Oh wow.
yeah. And I expected to even continue to use the pedals, in front of the acts. But then once we started throwing up the pedals that they have modeled within the acts, we didn't need to. It's a little bit sad. I miss my my giant massive rig that we used to carry around the world, but
Yeah.
it's pretty ridiculous. And like we did some A/B testing, and it even fooled me a couple times. What we did was we set up one of my amps in another room at the rehearsal hall, and then we set up the fractal, and then we piped them both into monitors in the rehearsal room. So it was a true A/B Pepsi challenge, and no one could tell the difference. I actually got it wrong. I was like, oh no, this is for sure. This is
Wow.
for sure the real amp, and I could not tell. So
I feel like
embarrassing. It's so embarrassing when that happens. You really think you can tell, and like I did the exact same thing in the exact same way last year with all my stuff, and man, you cannot tell really at all. I was fooled probably 70% of the time. I was like, that is my amp, dude. That's it. And every single time it wasn't.
It's hard. The only time it's ever very clear is if it's the amp in the room. When you hear it,
that's exactly what I was going to say. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Recorded, it's really hard to tell because it's just a different delivery method, and you lose a lot of information along the way. But when it's in the room, it's like, oh yeah, night and day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say that specifically for you, Charles. Like, and depending on the venue you're playing, but like for us, my amps were under the stage anyway, so I wasn't even in contact with them. But if we were playing, smaller rooms, there's nothing like actually moving the air of the room. That's just magic, and like you can't replicate that. But if it's already, if I'm listening through my in-ears and my amps are like behind the stage anyway, then it's hard to tell.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like it becomes a game of the whole like the front fill thing, like And there's definitely times where like I remember playing like Wolf Trap and just the people in the front like turn it down, and I'm like, dude, no, I'm already playing like those 65 amps, which have like the great Master Voltage thing and all that, and like they're not that loud. You just decided to sit right in front of the speakers. But
I used to hate that because I would like in the early days, like we were so fucking loud, like to be in the front row or to be on my side of the stage, because I was usually running. I mean, I always loved my divided by 13.
Yeah.
And I was usually running that at the same time as a matchless, and it was just so loud.
Yeah, they're definitely loud. Even these 65 guys with the master thing and all that, like, I love these amps so much. But like the thing that, like, I don't think Dan's watching, but no offense, but all the way down is still pretty loud. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, so like at my home studio here, like I have like this like hand wired Vox AC15 behind me, and like I can get that thing to be like I grew up with this like Mesa Lone Star Special thing that I sold at some point, but like I feel like I didn't realize at the time how good that amp sounded barely on. And like there is so much to be said for that, I think. And then like
the Lone Star, that was a great amp, and I would use that as a backline amp sometimes, and that was a totally underrated amp.
Yeah, I want to get another one.
You could get a good sound, at a pretty low volume, which is always the problem.
Yeah.
I've mistaken digital sound for analog sound a couple times, and like I saw the Smashing Pumpkins a couple times last year, and I was like, I was like, oh my god, it's atrocious. It sounds so bad. It's so bright and shrill. The performance is great. They rocked, but I was like, oh my god, they went to modelers. This is terrible. And then I find out, nope, it's all live amps.
They have always sounded bad. Every single video out there that sounds shit, dude.
The other thing I was going to say about the front fills thing is, so if you're in a situation where you're playing a show and you do have all the amps like digital or whatever, you have to make sure that there is some sort of like front fill thing for the audience, because if all you're hearing is drums and you're that close to the person buying those expensive tickets, that could be an awkward thing. So like that's where like I feel like I would still kind of use real amps, but like sometimes I'd come from this world of being an indie band and having that little Mesa 110 or 112, whatever, to like, no, we're going to backline you like at least super reverbs, because like you need to fill out the volume of like the drums, and that whole kind of balance in that thing, which I was so like foreign to. and was like, wow, this seems like too much. I don't know. Like, but I think it's so like situationally, but I feel like it's got to be so nice to not, like, so many of our shows were backline, and it's just these horrible amps.
Oh, you never know.
You have like 5 overdrives because you're like, okay, if one sounds okay today, that's why you have it.
Yes.
It's not like, oh,
Totally.
it's my perfect stack. It's like, this one is going to sound like a bee's nest today. Like, and
Yeah.
you don't know, you know?
That's how gigging with the Super Reverb was for me. That's for sure. One, every sound guy fucking hated me, and I was on 2, and then like it was like every third day there was always something wrong, every single time. Like the only consistent amp that I've gigged with in years has been my Silk Tone, and now my Silk Tone is profiled, and I just use the cab.
Yeah, fuck you, Charles.
Just take it,
man.
Check it out. You write.
He's here.
I think
you
like
write,
that.
you write with the Silk Tone and you perform with whatever the fuck is convenient. You know, I think good gear and good amps, good guitars, good everything. Yeah, if you get into a big show and drums are banging and there's a bunch of monitors, you're not going to be able to tell that difference in the audience. But when you're writing, you want to play what inspires you. And I bet you're never writing with a fucking, modeler through that, FRFRs.
Do you know one of the best I think analogies that I had heard about modeling versus we were talking specifically about like vintage tube amps. What actually came from Blake from the Tone Mob. And he was like, he and I both have classic cars. He has, I have a Corvette. He has an old Camaro, and
he seems like a Camaro guy.
Yeah.
I just want to say, and they call me the blues lawyer,
right? But he was like,
you called yourself that.
Fair point. He was like tube amps are the Camaro. They're the Corvette. It's the thing that you take out on a special occasion, and then but for your daily driver, like you drive that fucking Camry. Like that's kind of it.
The Tesla.
And, well, it is a Tesla at this point, but at one point it was a Camry.
Okay.
So
Tesla's the California Camry.
Right.
That's a better analogy.
Either way, it's a Camry.
That's so true.
Camrys are an underrated car.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean, they last forever.
Correct?
True.
For sure.
What do you drive? Do you drive a Camry?
For me?
Yeah.
Oh no, I have a Jeep, and that thing is it's been telling me one of the tires is like it's a dog. Yeah. But I had a Civic though, guys, at one point. So
I have a Honda Fit.
Oh, nice.
You do have a Honda Fit. I haven't ridden in it just out of fear, but you do have one.
I have. It'll get you there.
So
that's all around the Midwest in that thing.
Hell yeah.
I'm in.
Just like in this discussion, I'm realizing, James, like just how much time playing guitar on a professional level you have spanned. And it's pretty substantial. And as a guitarist, watching the industry change throughout the freaking decades that you have been playing professional music, like, how do you look at, I mean, like, I feel like there are people who are optimistic about the future. There are people who are doom and gloom about the future. There are people, like where do you fall in as someone who has a job to do and you do it? Like, how does this, I think, like, digital thing, I mean, you've fully embraced it, but like, how does all of this affect you as a professional musician? As opposed to a bedroom musician who is complaining about not being able to hear their 6v6s the way they want to hear them.
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. Well, I mean that's I really try not to try, because now, like, yeah, having done this for 25 years, I never want to fall into the category of like the old guy yelling at the kids on his lawn about the way things should be done, and so I try, like you said, like I've embraced the new digital stuff, but it took me a long time because I was clinging to my tube amps and pedal boards, and I loved all of that analog stuff. But yeah, I'm generally an optimist when it comes to the state of music and the state of the world. Like it's like what I like about what's happened and what I've seen happen is when I started, I grew up in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I got interested in music, and I went to the music store and I pored over music books, and I went to the record store, looked at CDs and, looked at credits on the CDs to figure out who were these people making the records. And it all seemed like really esoteric, niche knowledge that I was finding and discovering. And, I sought out the one jazz guitar player in town who could teach me the melodic minor modes.
Yep.
Then there was like one guy, and he was the one guy who had the knowledge, and I could order books, from the back of, guitar magazines that, I anxiously waited for every month. And there was something really special about that. I've probably romanticized that sort of past, but now today, and this is where I start to sound like the old man, yelling on his lawn. Now today with YouTube, just the resources that are available for these kids is incredible, and for everyone. And you can learn how to play anything instantly. You can get rig, like just trying to, when I was trying to put together my rig when we started touring, or even before that, just like, okay, like what are these guys using? What's this pedal? What's this amp? And now today, like all of that knowledge is just available to these kids at their fingertips, which I think is amazing. And I think that's only going to lead to more and more innovation. And you see these kids, I think the number of I don't know if it's just because we're aware of them with social media, but I think there's more great guitar players on the planet right now than any other time in history. Because I think that the knowledge is so available, people are taking it and running with it and doing amazing things. So I'm generally stoked about the way everything's sort of gone, but it's been really interesting to see, because it just kind of feels like, oh, this was like this niche sort of rabbit hole that I was in, and I felt like nobody really understood. And now there's this huge community, here online of everybody sort of sharing all this stuff, which I think is beautiful.
Yeah, that kind of goes back to how we started the show, right? Like I would watch Steve Albini, and that like basically changed the way I operate my own studio. It was just like, I was able to get a window into what it was that he was doing, so I could replicate it. And yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, I think there was a discussion, that I prompted. So the new version of Logic is coming out very, very soon. And
oh, really? I didn't know that.
Logic 11 is coming out very soon. They announced it on Monday.
Ooh, I'm a Logic guy.
Yeah,
I'm a Logic guy.
I love
it. Yes.
Die hard.
Yes, same. This is what this chat is.
And,
I didn't know we could do that.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I didn't get one. It's fine.
I don't like you guys in here. All right.
Oh, look at that, dude. That was sick.
But I mean, like,
Oh my
so
God.
they have this. Sean's working it.
Yes.
But they
Sean's
have
on mute.
One of,
You've been muted this
sorry.
whole time.
Yeah, you don't
Yeah,
need to hear
Mark.
me cursing. There we go.
one of the new things with Logic 11 is that you are basically going to be able to have an AI band. And
there's like a voice memo app.
Is going to play every instrument.
Yeah, and like granted, I'm just a dude on YouTube and just a dude who does like commercial advertisement stuff. But like, I learned every instrument. I spent a whole bunch of time learning all the instruments that I play. But not only that, like how to mix them, how to mic them, how to do all of the stuff. And for the first time in my life, like I read all of this stuff about AI, and I was like, yeah, whatever. And now I'm like salty.
I guess you probably think I should have to pay back my student loans too.
Right, exactly.
I think though, what I'll say is like about that though, like I think there's still gonna be a place for like, and this is gonna sound douchey, but like taste. Like I've kind of like I've mostly been like on the side like producer guy and stuff, and it's like I obviously like guitar guy, all this stuff, but like I feel like a huge thing that comes into play is just how like drums sound. And like, yeah, Logic, like the Liverpool kit sounds so sick. And like I've been like doing some like mixing stuff on the side, and it's funny to get stuff from guys that are like pro drummers that like you get like so many tracks, and I'm like, this sounds terrible. Like I'm like trying to replace everything about the kick drum and everything about the snare drum, and I'm like, I have like an okay setup here. I'm really stoked about it, but like it's not like mind-blowingly like the most pro thing in the universe, but like I'm like I could get better like in my mind what I think drums should sound like, I could get them recorded here better than it's like. And I think that like scarily Logic drummer's already been a thing too. That's how I got into really producing anything at all, was when that was an option. And it was like, you could sort of use that little XY what to do, but then it kind of drove me to like splitting the drums out and being like, okay, what do I want the snare to really sound like? And it was funny because I'd record other drummers in like a real situation and be like, man, I don't know how to like mix drums. And then it kind of actually inspired me backwards to like just play them again, because I was like, oh, they're just hitting them in a way that I don't like. Like they're hitting the snare so hard that if I add a compressor, it's already like at the top, it's like rim shots and stuff that I didn't connect with like sonically. So I feel like it's scary, but it's also going to be like, I don't know. I'm not worried about it. I feel like it's going to be fine. I feel like we're all going to find ways to use it to like help, like save time when it's helpful. But I think like the nitty gritty of like the real creative stuff that people will connect with is always going to exist.
Yeah. AI can't even get hands right yet. So I don't think people have too much to worry.
That's always the giveaway on the pictures, right? It's like, oh, did you see the knuckle?
Can't do it.
It's like
I have getting away from the AI thing, which is terrifying, and back to the good old I guess the differences in we're just talking about like how people and how kids these days learn. Now I sound like an old man. Kids these days learn about songs, and you can go and it is awesome. You can go on YouTube and be like, how do I play the Stairway to Heaven solo? And you'll have like 17 different videos on how to do it. And for me, it was like, I remember when I was starting, it was like a mystical kind of thing. I mean, you can go and you can get the tabs, or you can get like the sheet music from Sam Ash or whatever. But there was this ritual, this like chase that you had to like earn it almost, or you can, you had lessons, your teacher would show you. But it was like more of a quest, more of a journey. Whereas I feel like information so easily obtained is also so easily forgotten, because the knowledge is always there, right? You can always go back to YouTube and get it if you forgot, or I don't know. And it's like every generation, something like this comes up where, like, our guitar heroes, the classic guitar heroes, your Jimmy Pages, your Claptons, Becks, they were like, we would sit by the radio and we would try to figure out what notes they were playing and try to get it note for note that way. And like, fast forward to like when I was learning how to play, and sort of coming into my own as a guitarist, there was, there were videos floating around the internet, and there was, you would download, I would download every like Zeppelin video I could find on like Kazaa or LimeWire or whatever the hell it was called. Try to follow exactly what their fingers were doing and figure it out, and then realizing that like videos weren't always edited along with the music, and that was difficult. And yeah,
that's true.
And listening to songs over and over and over again to try and figure like a new song. So like, I actually, so this is perfect. So like when you guys, so James, when you guys came out with songs about Jane, which, again, in 2002 I was in high school. So that was, for me, that hit like exactly in the right time. And I had to learn, one of the first songs I played live, actually maybe the second or third song I played live in high school, was Harder to Breathe. And and I was like, yeah, this is fucking awesome. And I was listening to trying to figure out like what the hell is going on with the solo. And I was like, listening to you playing, trying to figure out what's going on and how I can mimic that. And there wasn't you guys were, I wanted to learn how to, there wasn't like a whole repository of knowledge on how to do this new thing.
Yeah.
You had to chase it. You had to earn it. It is a little different today with
so do you
so much knowledge out there.
Do you feel like, and maybe this is kind of my bitch about the AI ban thing, like do you feel like some of the gatekeeping has been taken away, whereas, and I'm kind of going, we had a really interesting discussion with Jordan Wave last week about gatekeeping, but like, like I did the work, I learned how to do this stuff, and so therefore I should be, recognized as the true musician who is making music, rather than the guy who is using, or gal or whoever is using the AI drummer. Is that it's a tough line to draw, where you want to encourage, but at the same time, like, you want everybody to go through the same work and toil that you went through. Like,
is someone who comes up with a great like drum beat with like an 808, and he like, is that like, instead of using like a live kit or something, is that?
Yeah, Ryan, don't you use loops a lot?
I do for drums.
For the library.
Yeah, like Splice,
Yeah, for drums, I don't play drums. And I mean, not well.
Isn't it true that you don't even play guitar?
It's possibly true.
Ryan,
you are a lawyer.
I would argue that learning how to use a modeler is just as hard as an instrument. Oh my god, I tried I tried the other day, and I get in there, and there's so much going on, and it's just a different kind of learning.
I feel like
I'm learning, but I'm committed.
Yeah, even the same thing with like the Logic drummer. Like, the reason I stopped using it and switched to real drums was like, it literally was taking me more time to use Logic drummer. It was I knew what I wanted the fills to be, and then I made this record with my buddy Jason, the Lifehouse singer, and we started this side project called Oswald. And I had come off the kind of like, I had this band in LA called Lost Beach, and we were doing shows, and that was where I had really started like producing and using the Logic drummer and putting songs out and then doing like decently on Spotify and stuff, and no one ever knowing it wasn't real. Yeah. But what happened was we had like, me and Jason like were in his like really cool studio back in LA when we were there, and I would just pull up these Logic drummer things, and he was like, these sound great, this is so cool. And we'd like finish the rest of the track, and then we ended up hiring one of our Lost Beach drummers to play over it. And I remember hitting this wall of like, I don't know what to do with real drums and the samples. And I had spent so much time on these sample drums, like affecting them and making them sound like the song, that we ended up having to like send all of it off to my buddy to mix it, because I was just like in too deep with the editing, and I was trying to line them all up and use both. And that just like doesn't always, that I've learned since that's not really the way to do it. You kind of got to like pick one as the leader, and then, but I just realized I was like, it would take me less time to just like get back on the drums and practice a little bit, and like put the mics up and just like really learn how to get the sounds that I want, out of them. And so that's where I'm like, I'm not like super afraid of it, knowing how much. The same thing with like the modeler. It's a dog to get in there, but like, so it's not like it's just like an instant on button where you're like, here's a good tone, I'm done, I don't have to do any work, you know. And it still truly is like in the hands too. So it's not, you know, I don't think anyone's just like giving it away. I think all the time spent is still extremely valuable. And I think like,
yeah, I agree.
You know,
I mean, I think for the big thing is at the end of the day, like good songs are good songs, and everything else is just a tool to make good music. And if you're listening to a good song, you're not going to sit and think like, did Logic make this bass line? No one's going to care.
Yeah, totally.
No one's going to care if the song is good.
If anything, like, I don't know. So what was that Charlie Puth song that came out that like broke him out as a hit? It was like from 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
The Fast and Furious tune?
It's gonna kill me.
He was just showing how he, you know, I knew he was a producer, a talented guy, good, like a real, like a legit, you know, heavy hitting, you know, knowledgeable dude. At least that's what I thought at the time. I'm sure if someone here actually knows him, and you know,
it's not We Don't Talk Anymore, right? That's newer.
But like, no, I really forgot the name of the song. But he was showing how but it has a really sick bass line, and I was like, fuck, I gotta like learn this. This is an awesome bass line. And then I'm like, you know, I was like searching YouTube for videos because I'm a hypocrite, and there was there he is explaining how he recorded the video, and it's just him sitting at a fucking keyboard with some sample library, and he was like, yeah, it just sounded good, so I just started, you know, playing it like this, and I was like, yeah, it doesn't, you know, like that bass tone is sick. What did he use? And it's like, oh,
That's kind of the Beatles. That's kind of the Beatles Mellotron story too, where, you know, like it wasn't designed to be used in the way that they used it. But they were kind of like, this is when you do this, it makes this cool sound. So let's put that on a record. You know, like it was just kind of like, anyway, we got a couple of minutes wrapping up here. John Doe has been blowing up the comment section, and I'm trying to
troll.
I'm trying to figure out which question would be good. And one was, James, do you still practice?
Yeah.
Like, do you have a
I
practice
mean,
routine?
when I'm actually disciplined, like we have shows coming up, so I've been starting to practice again. What I've been practicing, you know, and I'm lucky to be friends with him, Corey Wong.
Oh yeah,
Sure.
He's from Minneapolis.
Heard of him.
Oh yeah, so yeah, you know Corey. So like he put out his he did this like his practice routine, which actually had some really good stuff that's kind of like good chop maintainers. Because obviously like I play, you know, sort of in a similar style to him. So he put together a few exercises that now actually I kind of do every day, just as sort of like chops maintenance. He goes through just major arpeggios with the relative minor through the circle of fifths. And then, you know, does like thirds, fourths, fifths, sixths, sevenths, you know, kind of basic stuff, which is also kind of similar to, you guys know Nir Felder, the jazz guitarist?
Yep.
He kind of showed me his practice routine, which was going through all the intervals. So I'll kind of do that as a maintenance thing. And then I'll do some chromatic exercises that I learned from Kurt Rosenwinkel. He also put out like his sort of practice routine. So I stole a couple of things from that. And then I'm also practicing the Bach Inventions. I have a book.
What?
I have this, which I rediscovered recently. My jazz guitar teacher back in Lincoln, Nebraska, made me get this when I think I was like a senior in high school. But it's actually amazing. It's like in two parts, the inventions. So it's sort of sight reading practice, because I'm horrible at sight reading still. But I feel like it's good for my brain. Like it's really hard, especially when you get to the upper positions. But it's just fun to do. And so sometimes I'll record one of the parts and then try to play the other part because they're the 2-part things. So yeah, I practice those things, and then I try to transcribe some stuff. If I hear something that I think is cool, I'll try to figure it out. But I should practice more. It's a continual battle. But I also like to play pickleball, so sometimes I go out and do that when I should be practicing.
We had on my friend Danny Rabin, who another Berkeley dude, fusion jazz guitar player, and his big thing, and I took lessons from him, but I didn't practice enough, so he dropped me. But like, but like his thing was like, practice is not supposed to be fun, and practice is not practice is not supposed to be performance. Like, you have your time for performance and you have your time for practice, and never shall the two meet, like, and like, you're supposed to agonize over the practice, running your arpeggios, running your whatever. I wish I could say that I am with him. I wish I could say I've mastered the practice of practicing, but I haven't. He's like, noodling with a backing track is not practice. Like
what?
It's playing with your metronome and doing shit that hurts.
This guy sounds like he's flagellating here.
Yeah. I just learned that I don't.
Totally.
Practice.
Yeah. You should be practicing stuff that is unfamiliar. That's what the goal is, to make the unfamiliar familiar, and that it can be a little painful and arduous, but it's fun when you start to get that, so get out there and practice, kids.
Get out there and practice, kids.
Heck
Be
yeah.
like James. Get out there and practice, and you will get a recording career with a popular band. I don't know, guys.
Promise.
Anybody else have any closing thoughts on this evening? I just, for one, man, having the opportunity to talk to someone on your level and of your pedigree has been just wild to me, just this whole hour. So I thank you for your time here, and I thank you for that first record that really just kind of inspired the shit out of me when I was 21 years old, but was a really, really inspiring record.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Like, I think you guys are like, you're younger than me, so yeah, it hit that sort of sweet spot. That's amazing to me. Also makes me feel very old.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, everyone just keeps talking about that record and how.
No, for like 20 years, like, if you had told me in high school, I was like, oh yeah, in like 22 years you'll be talking to James Valentine about this record, I'd have been like, you're crazy. But I had the opportunity, so I'm just gonna fucking milk it.
Yep.
I love it.
But also, moves like Jagger fucked.
It does.
That is like that, when that came out, I was like, this is the fucking Maroon 5 I want to hear. This is my shit.
That's a great. The amount of times I've covered that with different people.
I mean, that is going to be on the function band playlist for sure.
Yeah, I think we share that.
Yeah,
the number of times I've embarrassed myself on a dance floor, nearing blackout drunk, doing like an actual move. Where I like, they'll be like, I have the moves like Jack, and I'll be like, and then people are like, you should go home.
Those are them. I think those are them.
That's amazing. That song, like, the record label initially, they didn't even want to put that out. Like, which is a crazy story. But like, we had the record label is still thinking of us as sort of like a modern rock sort of band, and there was another single on that record called "Never Gonna Leave This Bed." That was kind of like an adult contemporary sort of mid-tempo power rock ballad, and they really wanted to push that single, and we were like, well, we think this is going to be the next one. So we perform, like Adam had just gotten The Voice, and our manager actually lied to our record label and said, oh yeah, they don't want to hear Never Gonna Leave This Bed. We're going to play Moves Like Jagger. The producers insisted, which was a total lie.
Wow.
Because we wanted to play it. And then the song blew up the next day.
Yeah.
Cool. It's so good. I feel like that was a launching point of that moment too, for I feel like a lot of like the format changed for like a lot of kind of rock bands. And like I remember when obviously it was like a record or 2 records before I joined the band, but like I think the song Halfway Gone was who mixed it? I can't remember. But it was very much like that world of like, we're going somewhere, going for it, you know, like really going for the pop kind of radio thing. And I wish I could remember who mixed it. It was one of the big European mixer guys. Serban, yeah, he mixed it. And it was it was one of those, and you can tell it's like a Serban mix. But honestly, dude, like truly, like, you know, I think I was still in Berkeley probably covering the Moves Like Jagger. Like that made me practice harder, because like that was a like extremely like on the grid. Like I'm still early on the grid every production I've ever worked on, but like having to be like, no, this is like, I feel like that even paved the way for when I moved to LA in the beginning. Like I feel like it wasn't a ton, but like little session work I got was always just like playing some sort of like triad thing and like super on the grid and like super that, and like, you know, mixes of that with like maybe way post like Phoenixy stuff. But that was, you know, such a good tune.
Yeah, things shifted around then. That was like when the 90s really, and the sort of like idea that like, oh no, a band needs to be just like a band performing in a room and that's it.
Yeah,
and then it sort of shifted. It was like, no, hey, it's okay. It's like that's
because I feel like then now a different thing. The One Direction thing kind of changed then too, and that was like
it was just everything shifted towards that pop thing. Yeah.
Pop always wins.
I have one last question for you.
Yeah, Charles, go for it, man.
When's the last time you guys were in the studio, or are you going to be soon? What's next? What are you doing next?
You guys put out your most recent record was 2021, correct?
Yes. No, we're recording right now.
Right.
Yeah. So actually, so we have like, we got like 5 songs right now that are almost songs, and we're actually going to go in. Actually, tomorrow, I'm going to be tracking some guitars on a couple of the new ones, and that's what I was doing right before we got on, was just sort of like figuring out parts for new songs. So we're in the process right now. Hopefully, we'll have something out before the end of the year.
Are you doing it remote?
Well, the idea was like we're gonna sort of like finish writing these and then get together. We've recorded most of our records until the last one because it was pandemic, so we mostly recorded that remotely. I recorded here in this room, you know, my parts. But Conway Studios in LA, which is an amazing studio complex in Hollywood, we'll get together and sort of lay down our parts as the band there.
Cool. Are you guys allowed to talk about who you're kind of like? Is it just you guys, or do you guys have a producer on this one, or what's?
Yeah, we're working with this amazing producer named Fede, who's he's really great. He's, you know, talk about knowledge of jazz harmony. He's a killer jazz pianist, but like
sweet.
Killer producers, worked with Coldplay and worked with Justin Timberlake, and he's really fun to bounce ideas off in the studio with. So it's been really cool to work with him.
Hold on one second. Charles, did you not mention that?
Dude, I said that earlier. We had
Brady Bunch.
Oh my God, yeah.
We should have had the blue backdrop.
We had 8 people planned, and I was
so close.
And I said, I'll come on, I'll complete the Brady Bunch. Let's do it. But fucking Kai bailed.
Yeah. All right.
I think Will is the closest to the right backdrop color. So
yeah. All right. Well, guys, this has been a blast. This has been a blast. We went over. We rarely go over. So that was great. If anybody has any last questions before we let this dude go, I'm ready for it.
Stick around for the after show.
All right. Well, hey, James, thank you so much. I know
Thanks,
you're
man.
a really busy dude, and this just spending time with us is invaluable to us for sure. Same goes for all of you guys. Will, Mark, Sean, Charles, Steve, Eddie. Thank you guys for filling the internet with more useless stuff. So
I've got
on
no
that
chance.
note,
Too far away.
on that note, I am going to bid this show adieu. Next week we have Summer School Electronics on, which is going to be fun. He's been kind of making the rounds on the media circuit for the pedals.
Sweet.
So that'll be good. And thanks again, James. Everybody have a great
Hey, thank you. That was
night.
fun.
Yep.
Thanks, man.
Awesome.